everybody, welcome back to my channel. So in this video I'm going to be going through 7 mistakes that new artists make, and whilst I'm talking about that I'm going to be working on another sketch, and this sketch was very much doll inspired and I wanted her to look very doll like. So this is the final outcome of the sketch, and also I am having a sale at the moment on my Etsy store. So it's a holiday sale and you can get 25% off prints and originals, so basically everything on my store. And to get that offer, just use the coupon code HOLIDAY25 and that will get you 25% off. And the offer is running from the 23rd of November to the 15th of December. So I will leave a link in the description to my store. So anyway, let's get on with today's discussion, which is 7 mistakes that new artists make. So let's dive right into mistake number 1. And that is thinking that you're going to improve really fast with your art skills, or having this sort of unrealistic expectation of how fast you're going to improve, whether that's with your drawing skills or like your social media following. A lot of young or new artists think that they're going to improve a lot faster than they actually do, and therefore they can get demotivated or disappointed with their results because they thought they'd be progressing a lot quicker. And so one thing to bear in mind is that it is going to take a very long time to get to the skill level that you see some of your famous and favourite artists get to. So it's not a quick process. It might take really long for a certain person, it might take them many years, and for others it might just take a couple of months to get to a certain level. It's hard to predict how fast you're going to improve, but as long as you keep practicing every day or quite a lot, then you will progress no matter how long it takes you. So I really recommend not setting too many targets and too many sort of deadlines for how you want to improve. Just keep practicing and it will happen, because if you set too many targets and say, oh, I want to be this good in like a few months time, then you'll get really disappointed if you don't see yourself achieving that. And I don't want you guys to get frustrated with it. So just keep going and you will get there. So mistake number 2 is something that I think all artists will have experienced at some point, and that is listening too much to other people's opinions and being too sensitive to what people say and maybe taking it on board a bit too much and letting it affect you. So what I mean is there's a lot of people out there that will want to criticize you or just tell you that you should be doing something else and why are you doing your certain style. They might say, okay, I think you should be doing this instead, or why don't you do more of this, or tell you that your artwork's not very good. And I feel like when you're a new artist, you are the most self-conscious about your work out of your whole sort of art journey. When you're starting off, you feel the most vulnerable with your artwork, and you might take what people say on board a bit more and be more influenced by what they say and what they tell you and their criticism. But one piece of advice I would have is to not let it get to you too much. Just be confident in what you're doing, in your style and how you want to progress with your art, and don't let people dictate what you should be doing with your art. So I've heard from a lot of you in the comment section that a lot of your teachers don't think that you should be doing anime, that it's not real art, and if you constantly have people telling you that you shouldn't be doing what you enjoy, especially when you're starting out, this might influence you and change the path you go down. But I think this is a mistake. You should definitely do what you want to do and what you enjoy, no matter what people say. So mistake number 3 is kind of along the same lines, but on the opposite sort of end of the scale, and that is to try not to be too defensive over criticism. So when you're new and starting out, your drawing skills might not be the best. Obviously, they're not going to be the best that they will be, but they might not be very good, and so you might receive a lot of criticism. And I think especially new artists can be quite sort of defensive about the criticism, or try to make sort of excuses for why things don't look particularly great. So for example, if you have your anatomy a bit off, you might say, oh well, that's just my style, that's how I like to draw it, rather than actually facing up to the fact that you do just need to improve your anatomy before you can like decide to make those stylistic changes. And so I feel like when you're starting off, you'll feel like having criticism is like personal sort of attacks on your artwork, and you might get very defensive. But I really think doing this limits your sort of progress. And quite a lot of the time when people give you constructive criticism, I'm not talking about when they just like bash you and tell you your things are wrong and this is wrong, but when they offer you like helpful advice, most of the time they're just telling you that because they want you to improve and they want to help you out. And if they spot something, they just want to offer that sort of wisdom for how you can improve it. And so a lot of the time people are just trying to help you, and if you take on board that criticism rather than just shutting them down and making excuses for why things look a bit off, then I think that can really help you improve. There's kind of like a thin line between accepting criticism and taking on board too much what people are saying when they're just sort of being negative for the sake of it. So criticism is a helpful thing, but when people just try and put you down or give you sort of hate or negative comments, that's different. That's not constructive. That's not helpful, and you shouldn't listen to that. Or if people are trying to tell you to do something else, a different style, or change what you're doing, then that is not helpful. But if someone is criticizing your sort of anatomy or your technique and just offering you a different solution for how you can do it better, then I definitely think that is something to take on board. So mistake number 4 is comparing your work too much to other artists that you look up to. And I think this is a really bad thing to do, because if you compare yourself too much to other artists, it will really demotivate you, especially if your artwork isn't where you want it to be. And another reason that you shouldn't compare yourself to other artists is that you are an individual. You shouldn't be trying to imitate lots of artists. Of course, you can get inspiration from them, but you need to follow your own path and create your own sort of artwork and style, rather than just trying to imitate someone else and also just trying to get where they are, because they could have been doing it for 10 years. So what's the point in comparing you, someone that's just been doing it for like 6 months, to someone that's been doing it for 10 years? Obviously there is going to be a massive gap in skill most of the time. And if you compare yourself to these people that have been doing it for such a long time, then you're bound to be disappointed because you're not there yet. So don't try and compare yourselves to other people. Just compare yourself to your previous self. Just compare your artwork to your past artwork and see how you have progressed. So mistake number 5 is to only create artwork when you feel like it. And I think this is something that really damages an artist's progress. If you're starting out and you want to get better, only creating when you feel like it and when you're in the mood is not going to help you progress as quickly as you could be doing. So because I do this full time, I now have to make sure that I do all of the artwork to get the videos up on YouTube, to get artwork tutorial series up on my Patreon. And so even if I don't feel like it, I still have to do it. And if you want to become an artist as a full-time job, you can't just create artwork when you feel like it and when the mood sort of strikes you. You have to be doing it all the time, even if you're not in the mood. And so I think when you're starting out, it's really good to get into the rhythm and into the routine of creating, even if you don't particularly feel in the mood to do it. And so you could do this by making sure you at least practice for, say, an hour every day. And so you'll have to make sure that you do that hour no matter whether you feel like it, whether you don't feel like it. Because if you want this as a full-time job, or even as a part-time job, or just something that you want to take more seriously, then you do have to make sure that you're doing it even if you're not in the mood. So mistake number 6 is not experimenting enough, and often this is because new artists are really scared of failure. So I noticed that a lot of new artists do the same sort of thing with every drawing. They do the same process, the same method, use the same techniques and the same medium, and just kind of get repetitive in what they're doing. And because a lot of new artists really don't want things to look bad and they're scared of failure, they just don't really progress too much with the techniques they use and all of that sort of stuff. And I do think this really limits a new artist's progress, because if you're not experimenting with new things, you're not finding new things that might work even better than what you're doing, and you're just basically doing the same thing over and over again. And if you don't change anything about what you're doing, how are you going to improve? You're just going to be staying the same in terms of your skill level because you're not doing anything different. And finally, the last mistake that new artists make is simply not planning your artwork out enough. And by this, I mean a lot of new artists don't really plan out what colours they want to use, create like little thumbnails and test the colours, or even just think about the techniques they want to use, the mediums they want to use, the materials that you want to use. A lot of new artists just sort of jump into it without thinking about color theory and all of that sort of stuff. So I really think it would help you get a better end result with your artwork if you spend a bit of time planning before you jump into it. But anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed that. If you want to look at the materials that I used for this drawing, then they are all linked in the description, as well as a link to where you can get the prints. I'd love to know, what advice do you have for new artists, or did you make any of these mistakes? But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye, everybody.